welcome. I'm Charles Duffy, and this is a special edition of Political Pulse. We're so honored to have former Senator, former Democratic nominee for President, George McGovern. Thanks so much for coming.
Well, I'm glad to be on the program, and I feel right at home here because this is where we landed when we came to the Congress of the United States back in 1956. We lived in Chevy Chase, and the Bethesda area for the first 15 years we were in Washington.
And didn't you live on the same street in Montgomery County as Hubert Humphrey when he was vice president?
We lived right next door to him. He found us our house, as a matter of fact. Hubert was born in South Dakota and spent his first 26 years in a town not very far from where I grew up. So when I got elected to Congress in '56, and he was already an established United States Senator, he gave me a call one day and said, the house next door to me is for sale. I think you ought to buy it. And he said, it's not a high price. It's only $25,000. I said, Hubert,
that's a lot of
money. I haven't got $25,000. I'm $10,000 in debt from this campaign for Congress. He said, go ahead and buy it. Maybe I can help you and you can work off the mortgage later on. It was good advice. Good. I have no idea what that house is worth today, but I know it'd be nice if I still owned it.
Oh yeah, I'm sure it's worth a lot more. And you were born in Avon, South Dakota, raised in Mitchell, South Dakota, where the Corn Palace is. You dropped out of college to go serve in World War II, a big war, WWII hero. You served in the Congress, the U.S. Senate, of course, the 1972 Democratic nominee for president. You're 83, and you look back at your life, the tapestry of your life, and what do you see? What do you think about it?
Well, I've been very lucky in my life. For one thing, I've never had a job I didn't like. I run into people frequently that say, I can't stand this darn job. I don't know how I'm going to stick it out here. I've never had that experience. I started off at the age of 14 cutting the lawns and mowing the hedges and trimming the trees of elderly widows in Mitchell, South Dakota. I had about a dozen of them. And that's what I did after school and on Saturdays. And I enjoyed that. I came to realize that women were the stronger sex. And
I won't argue with you there.
And that they get along pretty well as long as they have some degree of economic security and can retain their health. Old age isn't bad if you're secure economically and socially and have reasonably good health. It can be the best part of our lives. And I learned that early on. I went from there to Dakota Wesleyan, got a degree, then the war came along. I was gone for 3 years, went back to Northwestern University, and under this wonderful GI Bill, I was able to go all the way through Northwestern to a PhD in history. It's one of the great breakthroughs of my life. And then I taught for a while at the college level and then into politics.
And it's very interesting. And a big issue today, obviously, is Social Security. And you hear President Bush saying, hey, there's going to be no money left in Social Security Trust Fund in 2042. It's going to be insolvent in 2018. And you just wrote a book, Social Security and Social Security in the Golden Age. Fascinating book. And you have a different take on it than President Bush and some others in Congress, too.
Well, look, I've been following Social Security all of my adult life. It's been around for 70 years. I don't agree with the president at all. Social Security's not in any trouble. It's probably the best government program that we're aware of. I think it's the most important part of Franklin Roosevelt's New Deal, and apparently both parties think that. It's generally been supported with a enthusiastic backing on a bipartisan basis.
Well, why is everybody talking about it? I think in your book you said it pales in insignificance to many other problems. We have $8 trillion of debt. We're in a war that's going to cost $300 billion or so. Why is everybody talking about it if you think that it can be fixed with just a few smaller approaches?
Yeah. You know, Will Rogers, the old Oklahoma philosopher, once said that it ain't what people don't know that's dangerous, it's what they know that just ain't so.
Mm-hmm. So
And
you're telling them,
I'm telling them it's just not so that Social Security is in trouble. The president is just flatly wrong on saying that this program is going to run out of money and that young people today will find when they reach age 65 there's no money left. That's not going to happen. As a matter of fact, it's not much of a stretch to say that Social Security is about the only solvent part of the United States government today. Under the present administration, the national debt has ballooned. But Social Security's always paid its own way. The workers contribute, the employer contributes. I wonder how many people know that right today, in the Social Security Trust Fund, we have $1.8 trillion, not billion, trillions of dollars in the Social Security Trust Fund. The Social Security trustees, who know as much about this as anybody, say that maybe by the year 1941, the year 2041, what's that, 36 years hence, 35 years now, we might have to make some minor adjustment.
And I want to talk about those adjustments, but I thought it was interesting when President Bush went around and sold this to the country. He talked about it in terms of, hey, listen, people, you're not getting good enough investment on your money that you're putting into the Social Security Fund. And your book was the first place where I read that, hey, we're not in this for the investment. This is social insurance.
Exactly. When you buy an insurance policy on your house or on your car, that's not an investment. You don't get any dividends unless the house burns down or somebody steals your car or you have a crash. Then insurance does what it's supposed to do. It pays for the damages. Social Security was not established as an investment. It was established as a way to take care of people when they could no longer work, when they reached the age of 65, or if they were disabled even before that, they could get help under Social Security.
And benefits aren't only paid to people who pay in. I mean, they're paid to widows, disabled people. So I can see your point about it being social insurance.
Absolutely. It never intended to pay people dividends. And incidentally, when the president advises people to quit putting money into the Social Security Trust Fund and to put it into private accounts, the stock market,
Right.
Real estate,
Right.
Horse racing, trap shooting, whatever, he's giving them bad advice because most of us don't have the expertise to invest funds in these so-called private accounts, and it may not be there when we get to the point where we can no longer work, or when we're disabled, or when we die and we leave a widow and children. They can draw your Social Security benefits. This is a wonderful program, and I would just say, don't let anybody tell you Social Security's in trouble. It's not.
And at the point, I'm going to talk about some of your approaches, but at the point that if it starts getting low, the trust fund starts getting low, I think in 1983, Congress passed a couple of laws that took care of that, and you advise, I think FICA taxes, Social Security taxes are paid on salaries up until $90,000, and you would advise, hey, lift the cap, surcharge, and let the people with more means pay the tax on all of their income.
You know, I've just talked about what a wonderful program Social Security is. That doesn't mean it's perfect. I've always been somewhat uncomfortable by the regressive character of the tax that finances it. A person earning $15,000, $20,000 a year pays the same percentage of his income into the program as somebody earning $90,000. And the way it's presently structured, people that earn more than $90,000 a year don't pay any FICA tax on the part that's above $90,000. I don't think that's right. What I have proposed in this little book, and it is little. It's the smallest book.
It's little, but it has a lot of information.
Well, I think it does. I think it'll clear up a lot of the confusion, a lot of the misleading political distortions about the program. What I've suggested to make the program even better is that we exempt workers from paying on the first $20,000 they earn. You know, these are mostly working people. They're people with families, and children, in school, and so on. I would say the first $20,000 will collect no tax from the worker. And I would say that after you get up above $90,000, you continue to pay. I mean, in other words, people earning from $20,000 on up, whatever the limit is, should pay that tax on their income.
But it seems you don't see a lot of political will up on the Hill. I'm not sure how it was back when you were a senator and a congressman, but people say, hey, you raise the cap and you surcharge salaries over $90,000. That's a tax increase. And that type of terminology today seems like it scares all the elected representatives away. Is there political will up there?
There's a lot of phoniness about the tax issue these days. Of course, it's a tax increase on that portion of a person's income that's above $90,000. Now they're paying nothing on that into the Social Security Trust Fund. I don't think that's fair. You look at the average person that has a modest salary, they pay their fair share of the program. And what I'm suggesting is you ought to exempt those below $20,000, and you ought to begin taxing the income above $90,000. You know, a person earning $90,000 a year can afford to pay the same percentage of his income for Social Security that a person earning $30,000 or $40,000.
I think you had an example in there that a person making $180,000 pays an effective rate of 3.1%, whereas a person making in the up to $90,000 range pays 6.2%.
That's exactly it. It's just, and it's an unfair. And you know, I think most people who are comfortably fixed wouldn't object to paying the same percentage of their income after they go above $90,000 that they pay on the part of it below $90,000, and that other people are paying.
And you also talk about some other interesting things in your book that are tangentially related or directly related, and that is that, you know, we got to take care of our older Americans because they have so much to offer, and society can benefit from them. And the one example you used I thought was interesting was President Bush's Iraq policy. And you said, hey, if he would have called his dad in, or Brent Scowcroft in, or maybe even James Baker, perhaps he would not have gone into Iraq.
Well, I think that's true. And let's be bipartisan about this. I've always thought that if President Johnson, before he committed that great escalation of our forces in Vietnam, he had discussed that with some of his older former colleagues in the Senate. Senator Fulbright, Senator Mansfield, Senator Aiken, Vermont, are three that come to mind. Even Senator Russell, the chairman of the Armed Services Committee. I think they would have talked him out of that escalation. Johnson himself had serious reservations about it. I also really believe that if President Bush, the current President Bush, had discussed that invasion with his father, with Brent Scowcroft, his father's national security advisor, and Jim Baker, the former President Bush's Secretary of State, I think they might have talked him out of doing it. And that's the point I'm making here, and it's one of the reasons I wrote this book, is that I don't think these editorial writers and syndicated columnists, not all of them, but some of them, who've been writing editorials about what a calamity it is that people are living longer in the United States, know what they're talking about.
Because it's a good thing.
Well, I think it is. I used to say, when the subject of aging would come up, I would say, well, I don't think it makes so much difference how long you live. It's what you do with the years you have But now that I'm 83, I don't say that anymore. I want to live a lot more years, and one of the reasons, there's still so much I still want to accomplish.
Well, you said you want to live at least to 100, and I love this quote, I want to die young, as old as possible.
No, you got that wrong.
Did I get that wrong?
I want to die young, as late in life as possible.
Okay.
In other words, I want to keep my health, I want to keep my enthusiasm, I want to hold on to my idealism, I want to be young in spirit, but I'll be ready to die as late in life as I can die young.
Well, you have a long way to go, let me tell you, because you have a lot more to do. But, and it's interesting, too, that you talk about the material equity, the Social Security money, but you also talk about how equally as important it is to have spiritual equity. A lot of people later in life, perhaps, don't have that thirst for knowledge, you say, the sense of purpose, the sense of discipline, the vision and opportunity. And it seems like you wrote this book not only to talk about Social Security, but also to, hey, bring it, we need to take care of the older generation to bring this spiritual equity out too.
Exactly. There's a Nobel Prize winning economist at the University of Chicago that makes that same point. You ordinarily don't hear economists talking about spiritual values. But he defined spiritual values in the broadest sense of the word to include the non-material aspects of our lives, our families, our love of music, of art, of literature, of recreation. This weekend we've been all cheering the Redskins here in Washington. Those things that are not related directly to material assets. He points out that not only do we need to ensure that people have enough funds to keep body and soul together, enough food, enough medical care and so on, but they also need the opportunities for enrichment of what he calls the spiritual values. And I hope that older people can have lives that are enjoyable and enriching, that they'll have enough income to go to the concerts, to subscribe to magazines, to buy the books they'd like to have, and do these other things, travel, recreation, all those things.
And another part of your life that I wanted to talk about, and we only have a few minutes, but you were a decorated pilot, the Distinguished Flying Cross. You were 22 years old. You flew dangerous missions over Germany, bombing missions, the B-24. And there was a book by Stephen Ambrose called The Wild Blue that recounted your flying and other B-24 pilots. And there was one mission, I think it was over then Czechoslovakia, and 2 of the 4 engines of the plane were blown out. And the plane needed 5,000 feet of runway to land, and you had to find a place, and you found a runway with only 2,200 feet. And what was that like, sir? I mean, a lot of us, you talk about presidents not, maybe being in war, but you were right there in war. What was that like, sir?
Well, it was terrifying. I'm not going to pretend I wasn't scared during that operation, because I was. Anybody in their right mind would have been. We also had a 3rd engine that was smoking, that not pulling its full load, and we had to get down or else bail out. We were over the Adriatic Sea on the way back from a mission against the Ploesti ammunition works in Czechoslovakia. My navigator told me there was this little island of Vis in the Adriatic Sea off the coast of Yugoslavia. It belonged to Yugoslavia, but he said, the underground there is cooperating with us. It's only a 2,200-foot runway there, but if you think you can put it down, that's the closest place. So by a mixture of luck and experience, I hit the end of the runway, and the co-pilot and I both got on the brakes all the way down. We stopped short of going off the runway. The whole crew jumped out and kissed the ground. That's the only time I ever saw them do that.
Do you ever think back to that time? We have about a minute left.
I do, and I'm so grateful that my crew and I made it through that war. We went over dangerous targets 35 times. I learned from Steve Ambrose's book that he wrote before he died that half of the B-24 bomber crews, the 4-engine bombers that I flew, never made it through the war. So I'm very grateful to be here and to be alive.
30 seconds left, and we are too, sir. The 30 seconds left, and this is a quote in your book: "The country is richest, which nourishes the greatest number of noble and happy human beings." And doesn't that sum up your life in this book?
That's my philosophy. There was a British economist that coined that phrase, the greatest good for the greatest number. I want every American to be happy. I'd like to see people around the world happy and secure. We've got to quit fighting these needless wars like Vietnam and Iraq and begin investing our money in more constructive things if we're going to have the kind of secure future I would like to see.
Sir, it's been an honor and a pleasure, Senator. Thank you so much for joining us.
Thank you for having me as your guest.
And thank you, everybody, for joining us. And remember, if it's Tuesday night at 9:30 or Thursday night at 9, it's Political Pulse on Channel 16. I'm Charles Duffy. We'll see you next week.
Mrs. Abruzzo, I'm Ed McMahon, and we're signing up people for...
Yes,
yes, I am. Yeah. Miss Murphy, Ed McMahon. We're starting up... No.
Dreams
no.
really do
Be
come
it,
true.
Be it
Hombre, dinero!
No,
Con
no.
cámaras.
No time.
Yes,
Ed
con
McMahon,
cámaras.
see.
Ed McMahon.
Yes, Ed McMahon. We're having our first
Ed
ever...
McMahon.
Yes. Tuesday night at the high school. We're starting up the neighborhood watch in this area, and here's all the information.
Stevie, get down here, please.
No, it's just...
5, 6, 7, 8.
No tango dinero. Neighborhood watch. We're having this neighborhood watch, the first one. Right. I'll come back.
Bye-bye.
Bye-bye. Thank you.
Start a neighborhood watch. It's just one of the many ways you can help make America stronger. To find out how, call or log on for this free guide.
Oh, you're lucky, young fella. Mm-hmm. You know, hospitals didn't even use ether for your procedure until about 1846. Yeah, slap on a few live leeches, grab a hacksaw, get to work. Of course, we don't use leeches anymore.
It's fun to know history. Find curious facts from America's past at loc.gov, the Library of Congress website.
Lewis and Clark, great explorers. Hey, wait. Hi, I'm Thomas Jefferson. Would you check out the West for me? Oh, sure. And they take their keelboat up the Missouri. Oh, Buffalo. Then they built Fort Mandan. They're at 1804. Made some friends along the way. I'm Sacagawea. Through the Columbia Gorge.
There are tons of ways to help with your kids' learning. Find the really good ones on connectforkids.org.
A sweet Pacific Ocean!
People, let me tell you about my best friend. He's a warm-hearted person who loved me till the end. People, let me tell you about him. It's so much fun, whether we're talking man to man.
You don't need to be bigger than life to be a good dad. You just need to spend time with your kids. It takes a man to be a dad.
There may be some things